Did you know that Google personalizes many searches by city and Also Asked is the only tool to access live People Also Asked data at city level? Try for free at alsoasked.com.
I was going to say that SEO with Fat Joe is as peaceful as this, but then the birds are all having fights.
Tired of SEO guesswork? Quadra's AI agent goes deeper to uncover high-impact optimizations and completes hours of SEO in minutes. Get started now.
Hello, good morning. We're here today to ask, is ChatGPT actually CheatGPT? And just before we get into it, we're not going to do that thing where it turns out that these images of us are AI generated. One of us is actually a cyborg. You've got about 20 minutes to guess who.
It's Greg. Okay, so we've got 3 key takeaways for you today, the 3 T's. We've got thinking about best practice use of AI in regards to transparency, training, and ethics. Not quite a T, but you get where I'm going. So I'm a researcher in media and cultural studies. I am interested in AI use in real-world contexts. Why? Well, you may have seen various news stories reminding us that the singularity is going to take our jobs and is going to take over the world. And in the meantime, AI is doing things like mislabeling cats and dogs and spoons and lettuce. And so I'm interested in what happens on the ground when real people, real professionals are using AI, and thinking about how specific contexts can help us really think about best practice use.
And from my perspective, I work at a comms agency here in Brighton. As we all know, AI has had a huge impact on how we work. And so I really want to understand a bit better how we can use these tools most effectively, and also think about some of the, as we've mentioned, some of the ethics and some of the training that goes with that. So it's been suggested that about 90% of all web content will be AI produced by the end of this year. Perhaps a debatable figure, but there's no doubt that there is a huge amount of content that is now being produced by AI. So the better that we can use these tools, the better we can help our companies and our clients cut through that AI noise. That's why we partnered with Tanya and the University of Sussex to do a research project. You can download the paper on our website there, scan that QR code. We interviewed about 1,100 people who work in comms and PR sector. That included SEOs, content writers, PRs, also managers of those people. And then Tanya interviewed about 30 or so of those to really dig a bit deeper into the findings.
I'm still looking for interviewees, so if you want to come and talk about your use of GenAI to me, please come and find me during the conference or after the talk. I'd love to interview you. Thank you.
Now, we've used the title CheatGPT because, why wouldn't we? It's a great play on words. But when we talk about generative text AI, there are a huge number of tools out there. This is just a few of the big ones. But when we talk about ChatGPT in this talk, we're using that really as shorthand for any generative text AI tool.
Okay, so our report found that a fairly staggering 80% of writers and managers are using AI, generative text AI at work. People are using it increasingly as an everyday tool, just like you would Google search or spell checker. So I had people tell me, like Heather told me, that she can't live without it now. People are using it in all sorts of ways. Writers especially are using it for rewriting existing text, editing down text, researching. People are increasingly using ChatGPT and its competitors like they would Google search, which kind of has massive implications for anyone interested in SEO. I'm sure you're all aware. They're also using it for things like a sounding board for their ideas, transcribing, making notes, suggesting structures, suggesting new ideas. So Peter, head of communications, told me that he sees ChatGPT as an extremely junior but very effective colleague who is not at all precious when he tells it that it's wrong. there's a really interesting kind of personification of our AI tools going on here. And that's reflected in other research that suggests people are being increasingly polite to their AI tools under the belief it will get better answers. Somewhat ironically, considering it's generative text, most of the writers I spoke to are not using ChatGPT and its competitors to actually generate press-ready texts. They're much more likely to use it to edit down text, to proofread, maybe suggest some structures. The right and why? Well, for these professional writers, they found the tone of voice that these AI kind of produce in their answers to be shallow and repetitive, very bland, salesy, quite robotic, or the other end of the spectrum, actually far too flowery. So people preferred their own tone of voice. They were using it for things other than actually generating press-ready content.
And so we wanted to get a bit deeper into, beyond if people are using the tools, but look into some of the reasons why and why not. And we asked if people, how open they are in talking about their use. And really interesting, only 1 in 5 said that their line manager knows that they're using a Gen Text AI tool. Only 1 in 10 said they told a client or external partner, and actually 8% of people using them in complete secrecy. And there are various reasons for this, but the 1 or 2 that kept popping up why was a feeling of shame or embarrassment or guilt about using them, which is quite interesting considering that we've just found that people aren't actually using it to generate press-ready text. They're using it as a support tool. But we had lots of quotes. This is just one of them. There were others that actually used the word feeling shame or embarrassment. But certainly people weren't using them to get a competitive edge over their colleagues. That was not one of the reasons that they weren't sharing their use. And perhaps one of the reasons that people don't want to be so open about it is because we're often asked to disclose if content has been produced using AI. And disclosure, it's a negative connotation. It sounds like you've got secrets to share. And so perhaps instead of talking about disclosure, we need to encourage more open conversations, both within companies and with our partners. And so that leads on to talking about this with our clients. As we saw, only about 1 in 10 people have done so. But we're missing a big opportunity here. At Magenta, we've been very open with talking to our clients about our AI use. We have guidelines in place, we've been trained, and actually, we tell them, if we can use some of these tools to speed up some of the more, boring admin-y tasks, we're going to have more time, which you're paying us for, to work on creative campaigns and, get much better results for your business. So all of the clients that we've spoken to are on board with us. We also looked at training. Actually, it'd be interesting, a quick show of hands. Anyone who has had any kind of training on AI this calendar year? Okay, not too bad, but it's, assuming that 80% of the room are using AI, then, there's a bit of a gap. And, this really tallies with that 80% figure because about 80% of people that we spoke to said the training might, probably, or definitely would be useful. So people are using all of these tools, but they also want to be trained. They want to know how to use them better. So there's a real call out there for employers to make sure that you are training your staff.
When we're talking about training, we're not just talking about prompt engineering. And by prompt engineering, I mean the idea that by asking the right questions to your GenAI of choice, you're going to get the right answers. This is obviously an important part of using these tools in the best practice way. However, the large majority of trainers out there are really over-focusing on prompt engineering when there's lots of other things to think about in terms of using GenAI in the best possible, best practice and ethical way. Talking of ethics, and oh no, I hear you cry. We also surveyed to see if people thought their use was ethical. Echoing the previous statistics, it was about 80% that said yes, they think that their use is ethical. This is not surprising considering how many people are using it, but there's a tension in that statistic between, yeah, I think it's ethical, yes, I use it, but no, I have not been trained. So there's a question there about how we move forward. What kind of things can we do to confidently use AI in an ethical way? So for me, best practice use, including training, is also talking about intellectual property. and not just other people's intellectual property. So in the interviews I've conducted so far, it came up again and again that writers and other people as well kind of felt bad that the ways in which they're using these tools may rip other people off. You might be stealing content by accident. It's also really important to think about your own and your client's IP. Neil, a publisher, told me that he's got about 80,000 website stories on his website alone, let alone his clients. You know, the industry as a whole produces thousands of millions of articles a year, and he uses Google Analytics to show that he knew that these GenAI tools were using some of those for training, right? So protect your own IP and think about your own intellectual property, not just other people's. Trust is another big kind of issue here in terms of how we think of best practice. By that I mean end user trust in these systems. The research that I do shows that as a general rule, the public tend to over-trust new technologies, and this is being reflected in how we use ChatGPT. So research shows that when ChatGPT provides source links or citations as part of its generated answer, this is actually counterproductive for kind of economically struggling news sites, for example, because the links legitimize the content as trustworthy and people don't actually click through. So don't assume that having a link in the answer is going to generate that click-through that you might be expecting.
Now, we can't talk about ethics without talking about sustainability. Here we've got some good old-fashioned data mining. It's been estimated that the average query on ChatGPT produces about 60 times more carbon than the same query on Google. So, perhaps we all need to think about if we have to use chat or a competitor for every single question that we have. Some estimates have been that it uses up to 200 times, it produces more than 200 times more carbon. So that's one thing to consider. All of these platforms also rely on data centers as well. And in fact, there was a story just yesterday in The Guardian that a lot of the big tech companies, the new data centers they're planning are going to be in areas already experiencing water scarcity. So like in Arizona, northern Spain, the Middle East, Chile. They take fresh water out of those places to keep the data centers cool. And even though technologies are improving on sort of reusing that water and keeping it within the system, that's one of the main reasons that all of the big tech companies are on track to miss their 2020-25 net zero goals. So yeah, it's something that if we want to call ourselves, ethical and sustainable as people and as companies, that's something that we do have to consider. And just talking about those images, you might have thought some of the ones we've used today are a bit quirky. We've done that on purpose because a lot of images around AI are usually Terminator or glowing brain or maybe an attractive female robot. They're not a good representation of what AI actually is. We've taken these images from Better Images of AI. It's a free library. There will be others out there. And I would just urge you that whenever you are using images with AI content, just to think about actually what is a good representation of that content.
And, why is a sexy female robot problematic? Well, it assumes there's some gender problematics in there, but it also assumes that there's a person behind this tool in ways that overstate the kind of complexities in some ways of what these tools can do. For example, you may be well aware that GenAI is prone to what is called hallucinations, i.e. making stuff up. But by calling it a hallucination, there's a personification there that it's somehow a brain that's seeing something about the world that isn't there. These are not how these technologies work. They are large language models.
Yeah, they've done some great PR with that hallucinations, because I know if I had a colleague who was sending me made up stuff and they just said they'd hallucinated, that would be a big problem. But with sort of AI, we accept it.
Okay, and so we can't talk about ethics and best practice without talking about ownership. Unless you've been kind of living under a rock for the past few months, you'll have read news that in the US especially, big tech, the tech bros are explicitly aligning themselves with US political systems. So knowing who owns the AI of your choice is always a good idea. Elon Musk recently tried to buy OpenAI, who are the owners of ChatGPT, and has repeatedly failed. And that might be good news for some of us who perhaps don't agree with his politics.
So we've thrown a lot of stuff at you there to think about. It's not all doom and gloom, but that really is why it's important to have company guidelines. They will vary by company, but generally you want to include what tools your employees should or shouldn't use. And that can extend beyond just the gen text AI tools. You know, there are so many video tools. There's like Gamma for presentations, there's audio. So think about which ones you want to have in your company, and 100% work with your team to decide that. They're the ones who are using these tools. They're probably using ones that you don't know about. So it's really important to get their input, because if you just sort of dictate what's okay, they're probably just going to do their own thing anyway. At Magenta, we've got a hackathon lined up where we're going to spend 4 afternoons in consecutive weeks, just as a team, just going through everything AI so that we can come up with our plan that we will agree on. Good guidelines should also include how you talk about AI with your clients, and you want to have something as well about human oversight. Obviously, you don't want to be just producing stuff that you send out to press or to partners, to clients. So really important to have that in place as well.
Yeah, and it might seem like some of this is quite time intensive, but again, the report that we ran showed that people are really using ChatGPT to increase efficiency. So in the long run, this is a good time investment.
So let's bring it back to those 3 T's that we talked about at the start. The first one, transparency. There really is nothing to hide. Most people are using at least one tool. So the way that we can all use them more effectively, more efficiently, more ethically is by having open conversations with each other, with our clients, share best practice, and just as important as sharing what's working well, share what hasn't worked for you, because that's going to save people time. Training, we've seen people are crying out for it. So, managers in the room, book it in, junior people, bug your managers, because it's so, so important. We've already had numerous sessions this year. Like I said, we've got a hackathon coming up, and it's just going to equip your team to be so much more efficient and effective. Involve your team in that, and do come and chat to me at the end as well, because we can help deliver that training for you.
So my key takeaway then is ethical use really doesn't mean non-use. It means kind of critical awareness of the wider context in which you're using these tools. Remember that professional writers really do have the authorial expertise to know brand voices, to be able to write in the tone that is right for the audience. So your professional writers, or if you are one, you're a better writer than ChatGPT, I promise. Protect your own IP, not just other people's. I think an ethical use of these tools equates to not just individual ethics, but collective ethics that protects already some struggling industries. And also check your privacy settings. If you're using tools like ChatGPT, they have privacy settings that you can choose to not share the information that you're putting into the software with your prompts, just to protect not only sensitive information, but also your company's or your IP.
Yeah, and I think by default, those settings are set to train the models, so you need to go in and opt out of it.
Okay, thank you so much. As we were saying, Cyborg's very efficient. We're 1.5 minutes under time, so thank you for listening to us. Please follow us on LinkedIn. You can tell us there which one of us is a cyborg, and please do come and chat to us afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.